And we've been through it. We've been through it once or twice already. And this is all spurred out of Thomas Cox's initial questions. I don't know if any of you guys were on those calls, but where he asked, if there was an emergency, how would you know it was real? How would you validate it? What would you do if there was software that needed to be updated? And so essentially, I wanted to come up with some standards for dealing with this, and I think other people also are interested in that, and that's why you guys are on this call. So I was just planning to go through this proposal again and take a look at where we're at and what's outstanding, and talk about what we can do now versus what we're moving towards, and see what suggestions people had about the direction that things are going. How does that sound to you guys?
Sounds good.
Good.
Yeah,
okay.
Sounds good.
Cool. All right, cool. All right, so let me just share my screen so we can look at this. Once again, there's a chopping in the background. I don't know where that's coming from. All right. So just please mute yourself if you're not talking. And I can't see your screens right now, so if you want to say something, speak up. Okay, so the proposal here is just so that we know what to do and how to determine when some alert that's being put forth is real, and that it actually does call for some type of emergency action to be taken, and then what that action should be and how that would be determined. So the idea I had was to form a planning team to come up with a standards, scenarios, and a playbook that can be executed, and then make a proposal to the community so that so that everyone could be aware of what that procedure is, and then the group can disband, obviously. So one of the ideas was to come up with a website where we could have an operational level status of the mainnet. And I came up with some ideas about how we could rate, like DEF CON, what the status of the mainnet is. For instance, at normal, it's all block producers producing CPU, RAM, net all within normal levels. And then there's a warning level where maybe one producer is not producing, or Craig suggested maybe where producers are missing blocks, but not missing all of their blocks. That could be a sign that something's going on. Basically any sign that maybe something isn't totally normal would be a warning level, and then a critical level would be where 4 out of 21 producers are not producing but still in the schedule, or RAM usage or CPU or net is at some critical level. And then doom would be 7 out of 21 producers not producing but still in the schedule. And my intention was that we just never ever announce a doom state. It's a state that we would never want to be in. That's why I called it doom. Totally open to adding more granularity in here, but I think as a starting point, this is a good place for us to go from. It would be something like green, yellow, orange, red. So does anyone have any questions or comments, thoughts about the status levels?
I think like I'd like to suggest that whatever tool is used to report that information comes from several sources, that we don't rely on one node to prevent views or malicious actor from taking over that node and giving false information.
Yeah, definitely. I was definitely will make sure I'll put that in here. Source from multiple nodes.
I just wanted to say as well, is because most of our certainly ours block producing nodes are completely hidden, and we don't. I don't have any active incoming ports open, so if we are going to report, it's going to have to be push somehow. Right. And I know Igor's on the line and he's working on the Hyperion, which I'd like to hear his comments, how we can, unless we can drag out the information from the blockchain.
Yes.
We'd somehow need to push that information.
Yes, Igor, go ahead.
Hey, I think like the way we push data from logs, from the producer logs to Hyperion, it will prevent anyone from attacking and hijacking the information, because we issued certificates and all the data is encrypted with the producer certificate, so you don't know, like looking at traffic, who is pushing, but the Elastic server knows from which producer comes and certifies that that producer is a real producer. And what I think we should do, we will be creating a Docker image like today or tomorrow that will allow any producer to easily push his logs, and we'll be also pushing system metrics for actual ham usage and other things, and we could add anything that you want listed, Ben. And then every producer, I think every block producer should host on his own domain something like a subdomain called health check. And then we could create a simple web service, like open source it, so everyone runs that web service, and every producer responsible for publishing the status information from the network. And we can push this status information from Hyperion, no problem. But every single producer every single BP is the front end, because this front end will have to have access to Hyperion to use the APIs, and we will then decentralize we'll not have one single point of failure.
All right. So what you're suggesting, Igor, you said a couple things here, but you said something about a Docker image to run Hyperion. So would that?
No.
Yeah.
The Docker is to simplify the logging, because you have to install file beat and metric beat to log your data to the server.
Mm-hmm.
And then we are building a Docker image that you just push to the official Docker repository and add your own certificate. And then you'll be able to add your logs to Hyperion.
So Igor, the Docker image will just run file beat and metric beat, and then it can access your log directory running on.
Yeah, you point that to your log files, and
okay, cool.
To push the logs.
You don't need that to see if someone is producing, right? We can just look at the blocks and see.
No, yes, this other monitoring, Hyperion already does that, and we don't need the producer to push anything for us to check if someone is producing or not. I'm saying this about the log so we can verify if there are another types of exceptions happening on the systems.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we could get
to monitor like system machine configurations, which is also important.
Okay.
So Hyperion will also allow us to monitor how the producer node is configured in terms of the hardware and atomic clock.
Yes.
Yeah.
Using metric beat.
That's great. I think, maybe what you should do is organize another town hall that's just about Hyperion.
Yes. No, I would like to do this, but we need to get every part ready to be used. And
yeah.
easy to be used, and then we can do this.
Yeah, it sounds really awesome. I think a lot of us are excited to see Hyperion and test it out. So let us know when we can do that, and then I'm happy to help you organize a call around that too.
Sure. But what you think about the idea of the health check subdomain?
I really like it a lot.
I
I think that it's something that would be recommended procedure, but not required.
Yeah, sure.
Right. And I think there's going to be a lot more of that too. And I don't want to get into the weeds on compliance right now, and standards, but it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, and something that we can address separately, probably sometime next week. So just continuing down this list, I don't know if there's any other comments on the status levels here that I suggested.
What you mean with CPU /net attacks?
What I mean is that, if there was like network-wide attack vectors to raise the usage of CPU or network bandwidth for all block producers, that, that could potentially be an attack vector that we haven't considered yet, just like RAM usage could be, to try to bring the network to a halt in some way.
Yeah, okay.
So just different ideas about what would create a critical or warning level that we needed to seriously look at if there was a system bug potentially causing the CPU of all of the producer nodes to ramp up. It could be something that we would see before some type of crash. Just anything we can think of that would potentially trigger some type of crashing state for producers. I think we should need to be aware of.
All of these things to me, they seem like normal usage of the network. Like if someone has a coin staked and they're able to do these type of attacks, like, is there anything that we can do about it? Is there anything that we should do about it? As long as people respect the rules, I don't see that as a problem. Like, we should be able to handle the load.
Yeah, as long as people respect the rules, right? But as the network grows and grows in popularity, it's going to become even more popular to try to find ways to make it fail.
Right. But what I mean is more, I guess these metrics should have to do more with, I guess, identifying these attacks, and not necessarily like for example, like RAM usage at 80% or even 90% doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the network. If people are buying the RAM and they are actually like planning to use the RAM, I don't see any problem with this. I guess my concern is if we start having like threat levels that are not really threats, that are not really that we can really do anything about it, and that are kind of planned in the design of the system, they are not really problematic.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So like if RAM usage went to 90%, that might actually be part of system design, is what you're saying, right, and not a problem. Right.
And it's just because if I don't want this to become some sort of like FUD meter or something like that that people can use to discredit EOS.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Does anyone have any considerations about RAM usage and whether that should be included in some type of status report that would take us to a warning or critical level?
I think I agree there that if it's network working as designed, it shouldn't be really involved. It's only in unforeseen critical failures. If it's like congested because it's popular or expensive because it's popular, I don't think that's a different concern.
Right.
So if RAM usage went to over 90% because people are really using that much RAM and the system's that active, then
and you need to check that on full nodes with because if there are full nodes reporting, there will be more RAM used than actual purchased RAM on the system.
Yeah.
And you need to check that on the producer node on the resource paged mem, because
Yeah.
otherwise you get readings from other stuff that people might be running on their machines.
Right. But would
It's- it's-
it not be something worthy of yeah, it would be.
Yeah, that's possible that's easy to be done. I'm just saying
It's easy
that
to be done, but I guess the question, Igor, is do you think it should be worthy of creating some kind of warning level for block producers or not?
I think if the RAM usage is reaching the maximum RAM that is it's on chain, it's set on the set RAM parameter. I don't think this will trigger any critical security issue or network issue unless
Unless you cut out there.
RAM usage in the machine. The producer are hitting the machine's limit, then we have an issue that we need to address.
But it's I think it's an issue then with the producer itself and not with the network. My suggestion.
No, but it is with the network, because if the producer are hitting some producers have the RAM limited,
Right.
they will eventually create performance bottlenecks, and it's an issue with the network.
I think this is, I'm glad that Ben's bringing this up, because it will be an issue, right? The way that the Bancor protocol works is that, I mean, if you're getting to 90% RAM usage or 92%, I mean, the difference between 90% and 92% RAM usage is significant, to the point where I think we've got to start thinking in that range. Like, is this some sort of attack, or could something be going on? I think the question that we have to decide is, people are
okay, but which type of RAM are we talking about now? We are talking about the virtual, the speculated RAM on the network, or the physical RAM on the producer machines?
We're talking about the usage of RAM on the producer nodes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Bancor doesn't apply there.
Yeah.
It's more of a performance issue I was talking about.
Agreed.
Yeah. So this is in regard to paged memory on the producer.
I see. Sorry about that.
So I think in that sense, it's something for us to be wary about. If something like that were happening, it could be due to some kind of memory leak or some issue in the software, maybe an issue in a contract. Like we just don't really know. I think it's just good for us to be aware of what the producer's system resources look like, and especially on the producer nodes.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
But can you be certain of what a producer has in terms of resource? Like, if you can take their word for it, no?
Well, I think what Igor is saying is that Hyperion will have a piece of software. Here, Hyperion will be a piece of software that uses certain things like, what was that? What was it called? Metrics?
Metric beats.
Metric beats.
So you'll be using metric beats on your machine, and you'll be certifying your data with TLS certificate that we provide you, so we can trust you that you are a real block producer publishing data. And yeah, you could eventually manipulate metric beats and manipulate the data to show different RAM usage and a different system RAM, maximum system RAM. But it will be very easy to identify people that were manipulating this, and it will be bad for them.
Cool. I'd be curious to learn more, Igor, if you don't mind. Maybe after the call, I'll just send you a text, and if you have any information about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, we'll be doing like a proper press release about what you're doing, like this week.
Awesome. Thanks.
Because I did a presentation on Shanghai about that, and I don't know if you were there, but
I wasn't there, but if you have the link or if there's a video or something, I'd be.
I don't know.
yeah, I don't know.
There should be a video, but we'd have to
I think
check in
yeah,
with
probably.
Ken and meet one, because
Yes.
there were a lot of cameras there. But yeah, it would be great to get those videos released. So I think that, you know, we're not going to get into the weeds on Hyperion too much, but that Igor is working on Hyperion and he's going to come out with something soon, and we'll do some meetups around that when he does to talk
Sure.
about it. Okay, so just moving down the list here. What we've been doing right now and what seems to be working is that we use the top BP emergency contacts telegram whenever there's something urgent, and then we meet in the Keybase top EOS BPs group for discussion, and you know, if we're at a critical level for the status, then we would get on a video call, and any producers that need to, probably producers in the top 21 and anyone who's technically advanced enough to help advise would get on a video call, and steps would be listed and translated, and each BP would confirm whatever step they're on. I think we've only had this happen one time, which was where the chain needed to be paused in the first 48 hours. But, you know, if we ever reached that status level again, where we have producers going down in mass, for instance, then it's wise to get everyone on video, I think, and verify that the proper steps are being taken to move things forward. So, does anyone have any thoughts or comments on the
Yeah,
current system?
I was just based on our experience, what happened last time, Ben, when we had to implement the blacklist for the set code.
Yeah.
I think me and you probably spent a half an hour trying to get a hold of different people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering whether we, as well as sending alerts to Telegram, I think what would be nice is if we can automate that in mass, which we probably could, but then also text people. So maybe not when it's a warning, when it's a critical, then we could use something like Twilio to send a mass SMS to everyone's phone number,
Yeah.
so they know that this is serious. You need to get online straight away. I just know for myself is when I'm sleeping, I'm not necessarily going to get Telegram alerts, but I'll get an SMS waking me up.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think we actually did have to call Cypherglass.
Yeah.
If I remember, because they weren't online at that time. And we had some of their found their phone numbers in the Keybase emergency contact list, which is just text files in the Keybase. So there's probably more we can do to build out this emergency contact list here.
Yeah.
Which,
yeah, that list was gold, because without that we would have been lost, I think.
Yeah, here's the list. Right. Yeah.
I was looking at Twilio the other day, because in my head I was wondering if we could do a pre-recording. This is a critical alert. Please get on to Keybase straight away. But I don't know if it's possible. Where you could record that and you literally Twilio just phones those numbers and leaves a voicemail. Or if you answer, then it just reads out that message. Because again, some people might not wake up from an SMS.
True.
I don't know if that's possible, and maybe it's going too far, but
I don't know. I mean, I think I think it's a really good idea, honestly, to have emergency contact phone numbers.
Yeah, me too, because I received too many messages and few phone calls, so a phone calls catches more attention,
Yeah.
and it should be the same for most of us. And we could eventually have another phone number that's emergency phone just for that. And in this
Yeah.
phone, we should never receive any message, so it should always be in ring mode.
So
Yeah.
Mhm.
That should work.
my problem with all that is, it's hard to automate gathering all that information. Is there hooks we can put into our own monitoring systems that say like, okay, if this happens on chain, alert me? Because like that's how I'm doing it now, right? Like I've got a Nagios alert
Yeah.
with PagerDuty, and I get calls, and it's like different critical levels, right? So like I don't want to add Twilio or all this other shit to my infrastructure, or if that's needed, or having to push everything out, right? Like there's people that'll jump up from the 50th to the 21st spot, and we don't have their information, and of course that'll be the exact moment something goes sideways, right? So if there's a way we can put in like, ping this URL and it'll alert me, or put this notice on chain and it'll alert the top 20, it'll like, I can look for that and alert on that. I think I'm in a much better, I'm happier as a producer in that case, right? Then my infrastructure can integrate however I want it to.
Yeah.
That makes
Yeah. Yes, yeah, that makes sense actually, but that's the best approach. So everybody registers some kind of a hook, and then some HTTP request or something, and then
Okay. So you take the responsibility of how you want to be alerted based on how you work. That, I guess that makes sense. And if you don't wake up or you come to the party, then you failed.
Yeah, and we set the standard, right, of, you have to have 24/7 coverage, right? That was from the get-go. We all said we have to have that kind of coverage. And so like, and we all have different infrastructure set up to do those types of alerts, right? So allowing the block producer the opportunity there is like, I think is the best case scenario. And,
So
and
obviously,
less onus on some kind of centralized collection of data, right? Like I'd love to have that emergency contact stuff, easily accessible via the blockchain if it wasn't going to be abused to hell,
But that endpoint would obviously require like some sort of a signature or like verification of who's sending that notification before it triggers, right?
Yeah, and you could probably do something where it's like if in EOS.io.prods allow sending of information, right? I mean, it has to be a block producer that sends the notification, and then we wouldn't even need to update it, right? I mean, I'm not clear exactly how we'd have to do that, or if how that would work, but I think that should be possible, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I have some code right now I can share with everyone to sign post requests with an EOS public key, so a private key, but
Yeah, so it sounds like we need to do some thinking around how to handle alerts in the future. And there are some ideas of developing a standard potentially to use an on-chain or some URL that people can dial into and post or receive notifications from that URL. It's definitely challenging. I think that right now this emergency contact list has been doing us well, but yeah, we need to figure out something else because it's true. It's not sustainable long term to rely on a contact list that needs to be updated manually.
Yeah.
So I had down here the idea of a URL hook. What were the other proposals, just so I can get them down here?
I mean, even some kind of smart contract that will post some kind of memo, like some kind of set standard message that we can, trigger off of. That should be actually relatively easy, right? Like a send that can only be accepted by a producer that will send a message out saying, something's happening. We're at a warning level. We're on DEFCON 2.
Yeah. I mean, and we could just query that smart contract every minute and see for that message, I guess.
Yeah.
There's a few things though. If we do it like this, first problem I see is if the chain has a problem, obviously, like we can't rely on it. And then the other thing is if if that information is sensitive, it would have to be encrypted somehow. Otherwise, like other people would also look at that contract and could potentially exploit or abuse.
Yeah, that's true.
One of the things that we did, though, I don't know if you guys saw, but I'll share the GitHub link. But we did encryption of, like a message in a memo field of a transfer action using the AES shared key algorithm. So basically, you use your private key and the public key of the recipient that you want to send to, and then you basically create a new private key that's going to be used to encrypt that message. And the other side is the person that receives it takes their private key and your public key to create the key to decrypt it. So we could build something with this kind of idea that would that we could monitor or even post to a URL, and it would basically make it pretty easy to verify the identity of the person, and the message would be encrypted, so nobody else would see it. Just throwing ideas. But.
Yeah, I can see how that works on a one-to-one recipient sender. Where the keys are already shared, but if we need to notify 100 block producers about something, then the encryption would be challenging.
Igor, Hyperion.
Hey.
Does that provide alerting?
Yeah. One of the things that we announced is that we'll be creating an alert API, so you will be able to register SMS or phone number, and we could do that, but it will take a while. It will not be ready right now, but it's definitely possible, and you could be able to add your phone number without people knowing that.
The thing is that if we all talk about monitoring, most of us on the call have our own monitoring, and I know from that time when we broke in the first, I think it was the first week or 2 weeks, we all knew, because alerting systems were, there are producers who don't have any alerting system in place. And maybe even getting that as a start would help, because if the chain, if the lub isn't increasing, we will know. If our block producer isn't producing, we're going to know. There's all these things we should really know already that there's an, apart from the RAM, obviously. So I'm wondering whether we should. But then this goes. I mean, I'm thinking get people to confirm they have monitoring and alerting. But then this goes back to what we expect from block producers. What compliance? What equals compliance as a block producer, which is hard to.
So I think there should be like alerting standards that are recommended, but of course it's elective for block producers to have any type of alerting. But I think that this is relevant also for things that can't be detected. For instance, when we needed to add the set code blacklist.
Yeah, exactly.
That's something where everyone needed to be contacted, and that it does take hours right now to reach everyone.
What if we do this? If we have your emergency contact list, and we've got the block producer name. So if there's a critical alert that needs to be sent out, you can query the top 21 currently, and then you look on the list for the numbers, and then you text out. So you only text in the top 21 at that time, and then it doesn't matter if they have alerting or not. They will know that there's an issue.
Yeah, so what you're suggesting would be put everyone's phone numbers in the list that they can be SMS'd on?
Yeah, and at the time of a alert needs to be sent out, we can query the current top 21 block producers and only send to them, or top 30, whatever we think is appropriate. Because it's quite simple with Twilio. It's just a single API call.
Yeah.
to Twilio. So no one would have to install anything additional. They just need to provide a mobile number.
I tend to really like that as like something that we can do right now. I always like to just look at like what can be done now.
Yeah.
And so in this case, everyone could be responsible for coming up with some number where it would reach their entire tech team maybe at once, or their entire team at once, or if they want to provide their personal numbers, they can choose. But to ask everyone to provide a number on the emergency contact sheet, I think might be a good solution for now.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any thoughts about requesting that from everyone?
So it's gonna be a mobile number where people can call as published. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I limited this so that only specific people can view this document. So right now we have about 46 people who can view it. I think what we're addressing here is whether or not we should add a phone number contact to the list here.
Yeah.
Does anyone see any issues with doing that?
Well, my take is that's a good idea, certainly. I mean, I think in general, the BPs that are harder to get a hold of are probably the ones who will be more reluctant to put anything in there. But it's certainly worth a shot. I think it's a good idea. So yeah, we'll put some numbers in there for sure.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so then I would propose that we move forward with getting everyone's numbers in there for now, and then we can always be open to Hyperion being useful in this sense, or potentially using a smart contract in the future. But I think the concern that was raised that if the chain wasn't working correctly and we needed to reach everyone, you know, that the smart contract might not be the best way to do it. But to have a technology solution that queries the list of top producers and allows an alert to be sent out sounds really good. I think just a question of who would be sending that alert, like who would have the capability to access that system and send alerts like that.
Just a quick comment on if the chain isn't working, we won't be able to send out information. If the chain isn't working, my alerting's already going off.
Yeah, yeah.
It better be.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. It's if the chain isn't working,
yes,
everyone would
yes.
probably be online on Telegram and Keybase anyway by that point.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I imagine that contract's more about like one or two producers are down, which still probably doesn't help because you're producing nodes down, but you can query multiple API endpoints to scrape that information. So you've got, which is just common practice, I'd imagine at this point. So I'm kind of the mind, I'd still like to try to do it on chain eventually. I think short term, having the emergency contacts have an SMS, if it's that simple to set up, is a good start. But I think everybody wants everything on chain as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, so I think the SMS message really doesn't do much because I get lots of Telegram messages and so on. So it has to be a phone call somehow. And
Well, what I was thinking there was I would put a telephone number that's just that's attached to my infrastructure that's going to call me. It's not got to be my real number anyway.
okay.
So.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
What we did here was the last ECAF rush. We added alerts to the. We have this Telegram alerts anyway, so we now monitor the ECAF, but then ECAF starts getting all the airdrops and stuff.
Yeah, on the ECAP official
Yeah.
ad account. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so
funny.
then the message keeps going. So the SMS is like, it's all full spam. I think we need.
Yeah, I get that too.
Well, you can just set up
That's
your alerts to filter on action, right? That's what, like, they have their own, I forget what action they use, like
Yeah,
block
yes.
or whatever. You could just use that. I mean, if somebody's
Yeah.
spamming them, of course, then you've got problems. But
Yeah.
Okay, so we have the idea of creating a smart contract that will post a message to trigger alerts, and each BP can monitor that and then be alerted as they see fit. And as a temporary solution until that gets done, we can collect phone numbers from everyone who's willing to voluntarily give a number and keep that list of phone numbers protected, which I think that that contact list has not been abused yet. I've been really wondering how long it was going to take someone to really like start spamming all the producers, but it just didn't happen. And now I locked it down. So hopefully it doesn't happen. I see some people are putting numbers in there already. So if anyone doesn't have access to this list, I'll post it in the Zoom and you can request access from your email. Where is that Zoom chat? Cool. All right, what else do I have down here? A bunch of stuff. Yeah, include emergency phone numbers. That was Roger Davies actually suggested that previously. We covered that now. Developing progressive alerting system like DEF CON or Google Apps Dash, and have a public version on BP status. We covered that now because Hyperion's going to have that as an option, and Igor made the suggestion of doing subdomains, which I really liked. So that's cool. Potentially using OpenDuty or Victor Ops to do the alerting. That's part of this texting. So we'll have to decide how that texting gets done. It could be done manually in the beginning for any block producer that we need to reach, for instance. An alerting system that can be implemented worldwide. Someone put this in here. Document procedures for keeping good backups and logs. So I think this kind of applies to something that I've also been thinking about, which has come up a couple times in different places, the idea of doing a best practices document for block producers. Do you guys have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I mean, I'm really struggling with backups myself. I was using ZFS snapshots and that's gone to pot completely. So I'm sort of stuck doing, you know, I've got to know that isn't on my alerting system. I stop it, I block and state, and I save it. But that only if I send to an identical machine. So it'd be nice to hear people's thoughts on backups and what they're kind of doing.
Yeah. So it sounds like, I mean, I think that there was a lot more information sharing happening before the mainnet launch and collaboration, and that after the launch, there's been less of it. Maybe each BP wants to be more responsible to looking good and being more prepped than other block producers, which is fine. But also I think there's something to be said for the state of EOS to just be sharing what's working in regards to things that could affect the overall operational status of the chain, like backups and logs. So yeah, I mean, anyone who's interested in talking about best practices, that sounds like something we could form another group about and work on as block producers and contribute to and publish something about. So that sounds like a separate topic that we don't need to get deep on right now. Just want to be conscious of the time here because this call should not be longer than an hour. So we have about 13 minutes left. Need SLA from, okay. Yeah, this is another interesting one that came up, which is that we need to be clear about who has the C++ chops to go in and make a code fix. Block one, the less dependent on them we are for any code fixes, the better. So it would be good to know if we have anyone, which block producers have someone that could go in and make code fixes. I'm aware of a few of them, but it would also maybe be good for block producers to have someone under contract, was one of the ideas, to do an SLA that they're going to be available to jump into any issue and make a pull request for something critical that were to come up. You guys have any thoughts about this?
Yeah,
Well, I mean, it's a tall order. It's more than just the C++ chops, really. It's very intimate knowledge of the existing code.
Yeah.
So, but obviously, if we do have some groups that have those chops, we should have those people in conversation themselves, I would think, so that that they can be sharing as much information as possible. And I agree with you, Ben, that there's been a distinct drop in collaboration or information sharing since the launch. Block producers seem to be much more coy about answering questions and sharing information. So anything we can do to counteract both of those things would be good. I mean, our best shot at making code fixes is to have all of our best people in communication, essentially.
What about Matthias at EOS Argentina being formerly Block 1?
Yeah, I think there's a couple people. I think Matthias is one of them. Michael Yates has demonstrated Stack has demonstrated deep knowledge of EOS code. Does anyone else come to anyone's mind here?
Yeah, Alex at Canada, I think is okay. Yeah. And Ben.
Yeah. So I mean, we have 3 people here, but it would be nice to have a list of 10 people. So I think that's something else we can work on is as a to-do item. I'm going to make a list of to-do items here at the bottom. One of the to-dos was add.
I think Matthias is amazing, but then I think it depends on the issue, right? Like the last time, yeah, Dan had to get involved, and I think he knows what it is and he knows who to call, and
So I think Roman from CryptoLion suggested at some point getting a worker proposal together, if that even survives, that pays for a dev team to maintain EOS mainnet, gets intimate with the code, yada, 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 has, QA and all that good stuff. I mean, I think if we can get a worker proposal for that, it makes a ton of sense. Like getting this knowledge out of the heads of B1 and into the community is going to be invaluable, right?
Have that worker, I'm going to turn on my video. I'm sorry about my hair, Saeed, if you're watching, you jerk. How about OCI? Hiring OCI through one of those worker proposals, because they would be less reluctant to relinquish that information in the public if they're not under very harsh contract conditions, which I imagine they are.
I don't know if they are. I know someone told me that they contacted them to hire them for a side project, and they had really reasonable rates too, which was surprising.
Well, we almost hired them, and then EOS DAC did hire them. So they're definitely working with block producers. But when it comes to if we were to hire them, if the main net were to hire them to explicitly maintain the code base. That may be some other thing, but something to consider.
Yeah. So mainnet may potentially hire OCI too. Okay. Got that in there, and I'll clean up this document a little bit later. So what else on this list here? Oh yes, just finishing up liability. Okay, so in emergencies, there there hasn't been exactly a scope of what is within the block producer's power to do. For instance, to unregister another producer. If that were a major issue where we needed to unregister a producer, then we might need to file arbitration against ourselves. And in case of any emergency actions that are taken, which might fall outside of the scope of what's actually within the block producer's jurisdiction, especially once we have pseudo power. So do you guys have any thoughts about that?
I think it already says within the Constitution that we are able to, either it's registered producer or Constitution, that if anyone can't be reached, they can be 2/3 plus one kicked out.
Yep.
And that, like, actually, this is probably the easiest application of that. If we are in a self-declared state of emergency based on criteria that is quantifiable, like for block producers not producing, and we cannot reach them within whatever amount of time that we decide is enough time, then we just unreg them, because the real consequence is not that much, except they have a black eye because they look like a non-participant, but they can certainly re-reg producer to no consequence, really. They just have to answer to the community now. So I don't see that as very messy at all.
Right. I guess what I'm talking about here is that for unreg producer, it's pretty straightforward. But then if we needed to add an emergency blacklist entry,
is it so like set code?
like
Type?
set code? Yeah, exactly.
Same thing. If somebody cannot be reached, and there is a security vulnerability with like imminent threat to the stability of the network.
Yeah. No, what I'm saying here is that if we need to blacklist particular actors on the network, for instance, without an ECAF or arbitration order, that, if the block producer decided, like, listen, we can't wait for arbitration on blacklisting this action or this actor, so we're going to overextend our power to blacklist a particular entity, and then we might need to file arbitration against ourselves.
That's a different thing. I think if we are blacklisting a system contract, we only need our own authority, and if we can't reach anyone, we can just unreg them in lieu of someone who can be reached in the meantime. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to blacklisting like a I don't know, sovereign account, I wouldn't recommend even attempting trying to put that in writing without like trying to say, like, in the case of we decide that it's a state of emergency, we can just ignore due process and do this. I wouldn't attempt to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would, to summarize, I would limit the language of anything like that to be only about system contract blacklists. Even DAP blacklisting.
Yeah.
If it does not threaten the security of the network, you have to just let it burn without due process. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we kind of tested those waters by blacklisting those original phished accounts, and I think that was probably not great, and we should be very, very, very careful about doing any kind of blacklisting of accounts.
If I'm to be frank, we should never do it again.
I would not disagree with you, Kevin.
Okay. Cool. I think that settles that. All right. Was there anything else that anyone wanted to bring up that was discussed earlier that maybe you just didn't think of at the time that you wanted to say, or any additional information? Questions?
Just briefly, I would just say thank you for setting this up and doing this. I think this is helpful, and I'm glad someone is stepping up and making it happen. So thanks.
Yeah, I do have a suggestion of how to make this a thing. How can we turn this? How can we? Because without this being like an MSIG transaction, it can't really go anywhere. Because if the point we were to apply it, let's say we unreg somebody, they're like, "What the hell? You couldn't do that." How do we move this to an on-chain kind of Ricardian type situation? What's the next step?
Move what part of this exactly?
For me, it's setting the expectation that here's the quantifiable segments of emergency, the different statuses that you have there, normal, critical. You know, maybe we don't say doom, but and making sure that expectations are set with the rest of the top 21 and those who may be a top 21, that if this situation happens and you cannot be reached in 30 minutes, we will remove you from the chain. You are free to participate when you're ready.
Yeah, so we need to figure out how to integrate this into the chain somehow. As a message or RC potentially. Okay. All right, something definitely that we should think about and work on.
Cool.
I don't know if there's an immediate answer to that, but yeah. Pretty much do here, and I'll keep it tracked as like an open loop for us. Okay, any other final questions, thoughts? It's 8 o'clock, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
No, that's it. So Ben, if you could just summarize what the next step is, that'll be great.
Yeah, I mean, I think the next steps are to get phone numbers added to the emergency contact list. If you don't have access to the list, request access from an email address that has a Google account. And then I'm going to make a list of BP developers or community devs that can be reached in an emergency. And then we're going to separately figure out how to integrate this onto the chain somehow as a message or Ricardian contract potentially.
Yeah.
So cool. Actually, I just wanted to mention one more thing that I'm working on right now. Is I'm gonna do a pull request on the mainnet sometime today. I've been working on some wording to make sure that when you install EOS software that you're aware of the contracts being there and the implications of the contracts directory and the constitution. You know, kind of like a terms of use. Like, do you agree to knowledge of these contracts? Because as of right now, I believe it's actually a gray area that those contracts even exist. Oh, sorry guys. Anyway, that's a separate topic, which I know Kevin and I will talk about for sure because we had some thoughts about it. But hey, sorry guys, dogs. Otherwise, I think we should bring this call to a close. Thank you guys so much for joining and for being a participant. And I hope that we make these town halls more regular for various topics that matter to us.
Thank you, Ben.
I wouldn't even call it a town hall. This is just like, Ben, you had a great idea. You took initiative to get everybody on together. Anyone that was interested, that wanted to help, showed up, and that's it. It doesn't need to be anything official. We don't want people to feel like they're left out or something.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Cool.
Great. Thanks, Ben.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks, Ben.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.